to Building Success series with Nick Ainis, author of Building Success, The Art of Real Estate Investing, and Building Success, Start a Business, Grow a Business. We're here to break down real estate, investing, business growth, and making money. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real strategies from experts and insiders who've built success. If you're ready to level up and create wealth, you're in the right place. Let's go. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good. I love those intros.
Every time I do one of those intros, I just
always screw up.
Did I screw up that time? We have a witness.
I'm listening to I'm like a musician, so I'm very.
You know the notes.
I clue into timing.
Well, we have a witness to that intro. Who?
No, it was a good intro, Mike. Don't worry.
Thank you. Okay, because I'm sweating over
here. I'm
here.
very highly critical, as you know. So we have Keith Stein, amazing guy. We're going to learn a lot about him today and everything about success and his success. And I hope to learn a lot of stuff here today. And hopefully he'll share all his amazing stories about entrepreneurship and his business career and life. And but before we begin, I heard something about some kind of a joke.
So let me tell the listenership that I'm very excited for this episode. I'm excited for all your episodes, but I know Keith Stein personally, and I feel like I have a friend meeting a friend. You know that feeling when a good friend meets a good friend?
Yeah.
And you want them to click. So I'm sitting here excited to listen and laid back. But I was with Keith and his lovely wife, Melissa, recently, and we I can't remember. We were talking about bosses, Keith. What were we talking about?
We were talking about Monica's job.
Oh, yeah.
And how she has to show up now, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week.
4 days a week. She works for a big bank. She's there right now.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but you have more flexibility, and then you were commenting.
And then I'm trying to remember now, but I made a comment about, my boss, because we were talking about our bosses, and I said, my boss, he's a good guy, he's a fair guy, but he touches me inappropriately.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who's that?
I'm still laughing.
Oh my God.
He touches me inappropriately, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of like it.
Nick.
I don't know. I don't even know I don't know if I should laugh or run away here, Keith. Not quite sure. But
my wife and I really liked it. We still laugh about it. We thought it was a brilliant joke.
Oh wow. Well, Mike is very witty, so he's got a lot of good jokes, and we joke as well. And he's a liberal, I'm a conservative, and but we have a lot of fun together.
Mike would like it though if we spent the next 45 minutes talking about him.
Yeah. So we're gonna. On that note, perfect time to segue. So Keith, welcome aboard. It's really amazing and a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the show. And we really want to talk to you about your amazing career. And I tried to do a little bit of research on you, and I know a few stuff here and there, but we want to hear basically all about your life story and your business career. And let's start from hearing a bit about who you are and where you're from. Are you born and raised in Canada?
Born and raised in Toronto, Nick.
Yep.
So I started off in law school. The plan was not to become a practicing lawyer forever, but I didn't really know what sort of background would be best suited to a business career. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be in business.
Yep.
So I thought maybe that could be the right foundation. So throughout law school, I knew it was going to be something that I was very pleased that I acquired a certain skill set and learned what I did in law school. But in the back of my mind, I always knew that it was going to be just one part of what I would end up doing. So I got out of law school and I worked at a large law firm before, again, trying to find a way to transition more into business.
Cool.
which led me to becoming the corporate lawyer for Toyota Canada,
Right.
uh, which was really a good gig for a young guy. I started in that role when I was about 26 years old. Uh, and it was an exciting time to be working for a Japanese company because at that point, we're talking about the late 1980s. Japan was really very exciting to all people in business and people
Yeah.
generally. You know, the way
It was.
everything is about, a lot of things are about China now. There's all this focus on China and excitement. Well,
It used to be Japan. Yes, I remember.
it used to be Japan. So I thought working for this great big Japanese conglomerate was going to be really interesting and maybe a good springboard. Um, but you know, for me, and I think it's important for most people um, in business. It's important to think about how whatever you're doing at a certain point in life, how you can really leverage it to achieve your goals and get to where you want to be, or at least get to the next stage of where you're trying to go. So I really made the most out of that position with Toyota. So I'm their lawyer there. I'm working with a lot of senior Japanese executives and Canadians as well.
Right.
And because of that excitement around Japan, I thought, okay, let's make the most of it. And I did a couple things to make the most out of it. I learned to speak a little Japanese, so I studied Japanese for 2 years.
Oh, very
And
cool.
that impressed the hell out of the other Japanese executives. Because I was the only person in a relatively, I wasn't the most senior person there, but they took their lawyers very seriously. So I had a lot of contact with the senior executives. And when they found out that I could speak Japanese and I spoke a little bit with them, they were taken aback because that was unusual for a North American hire to learn Japanese.
That's great.
They were impressed, but it made me. I think it got their attention, and you want to sometimes get people's attention, so you're not just another person in the machine. But I even took it one step further. I set up a nonprofit organization to promote better relations between young North American business people and their Japanese counterparts.
Wow.
So it was sort of a networking organization, and it was the best possible networking organization for Keith Stein, because I'll tell you how I used that platform in some interesting ways. So first off, I was a nobody. I didn't come from a wealthy family or anything like that, and I realized that in business and in life generally, it's really important to establish relationships. Everyone knows that,
Yeah.
but I think you have to work at it. I'm not sure everyone works at expanding their network and expanding their relationships. So I used this nonprofit organization,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I had really good goals. It really was intended to promote more interaction between North American business people and Japanese, and it actually ended up serving that purpose. But it was really useful for me because I started it from scratch, which meant, okay, I'm going to need an advisory board. I'm like a nobody. I'm going to need some big shots to help me get this off the ground.
Right.
So way back then, Al Eagleson Sr. was still a really big deal in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
This is before, he ended up getting into a lot of controversy, and his reputation suffered, but not at that point in time when I reached out to Al Eagleson Jr., who still had that great last name and was still super connected with prime ministers and some of Canada's most prominent people. I couldn't find these people. But when you're setting up a nonprofit organization and you want to get traction,
Mm-hmm.
you need people of a certain stature.
Right.
And
Of
I
course.
didn't have that. So Eagleson became sort of my wingman on that nonprofit.
Did you know him? Did you know him or?
We became friends, actually. He was a good guy. And we did other things beyond that organization.
Mm-hmm.
But in relation to that organization, he introduced me to John Turner, former Canadian Prime Minister.
Wow.
And we ended up having a launch event for the organization was called the North American Japanese Friendship Foundation. The acronym was NAJAF. And we assembled at Saatchi and Saatchi, I remember, and we had like 150 people who showed up. Now, I made a point of inviting all the Japanese executives from Toyota, but Japanese executives from all the other established Japanese companies in Toronto and Canadian business people. And because all these people were getting together, and because through Eagleson, I'd arranged for John Turner to be one of our guest speakers, along with the Japanese Consul General and other dignitaries, it was a really splashy event.
Wow.
But I did one other thing. I'm sorry to talk so much about this.
No, that's okay.
But that nonprofit I set up, Nick, it's interesting. You got to take shots in life, and I took a shot there.
Yeah.
I took a bunch of shots. But one shot I took ended up really rippling through the next 10 years of my life. Because in addition to Eagleson, who I cold called, and we became fast friends, I cold called Belinda Stronach, daughter of Frank Stronach. So Frank Stronach, at that time, was the chairman of Magna International.
Mm-hmm.
He's the founder of Magna International.
Yep.
Like Eagleson, his reputation has really taken a lot of hits over. It's been more recent. But at that time, Frank Stronach was one of the preeminent entrepreneurs in the country, and his daughter was well known, not as well known as him because she was the daughter of Frank, and she got some publicity, and she was an executive with Magna. I cold called Belinda and asked her if she would join my advisory board, and she said yes. And she came to that big splashy lunch I had, and she brought her husband, Don Walker, who at that time was the CEO of Magna International. So I stood up on the podium and I made a speech in Japanese, which really, blew some minds because it's the last thing they expected some Canadian guy to get up in front of a lot of Japanese and make a speech in Japanese. And then I switched over. I talked in Japanese without notes for about 2 minutes, and then I switched over to English. So Belinda and her husband, Don, no longer her husband, but they were married at that time, they seemed to be impressed. And that encounter led to Belinda calling me up and saying, you should meet my dad. So about 6 weeks later, I had lunch with Frank Stronach. And the first thing he said to me when we met, I hear you speak Japanese. So that little, that little skill I acquired, I got a lot of mileage out of it. And Frank and I hit it off, and we had more than one lunch. And but very early on, when we were meeting, he said, "Keith, I'm thinking about maybe you joining Magna and being my right-hand guy." And that's actually what happened. Wow. I left Toyota and I joined Magna as a special assistant to Frank Stronach. Mm-hmm. And when I said earlier that move with Belinda and this whole Japanese thing, how it really had a ripple effect throughout the next phase of my life. I went from assistant to vice president to senior vice president, all the while remaining in the office next to Frank's, which I continue to use and in a much more powerful way. At that point, Magna not only had Frank Stronach, who was this well-known guy, but Magna was this giant corporation operating in over 20 different countries. For sure. One of the largest employers in the country. And we had all sorts of resources. And people wanted to get to know us. And how would they and they wanted to meet Frank. How would they meet Frank? They had to come through me normally. Wow. So I became a bit of a gatekeeper. And I had all sorts of other responsibilities at Magna, of course. But I went from being a nobody a few years before when I was working at Toyota to, by the time I was about 30 years old in 1994-ish, I was working with Frank, and suddenly I was dealing with politicians from around the world at the most senior levels and business people at the most senior levels who wanted to talk to me about something they're working on with Frank, or they wanted to get together with Frank, or some deal they wanted to do with Magna. So it was a tremendous platform. I really got to a place, and the place I really, the place I now, not that I dreamt in law school of being at that specific place, but the perfect place I aspired to get to, that sort of platform to learn more about business, to develop relationships, and also to do, to enjoy the sort of financial stability I wanted to achieve at a fairly young age. So why don't I stop there? Because I really,
that's a great place to stop, because it shows that you had this sort of initial idea about bringing people together from other countries, and you excelled in your Japanese studies, and you really wanted to make an impact, to make an impression with your Japanese clientele, and it led to this other amazing thing where you're now with a very powerful individual, and you've got access to all these people and relationships. Because I think you're right. It is all about relationships. The more people, the people that you know, and especially if they're very, I guess, powerful individuals, it's going to open up a lot of doors for you. And I think that's so. What happened after that? Because I think there's the blossoming of your relationships, and then now I think you moved on at some point. Why did you make the move?
So there are two themes, though, I think, to what I did in those early years, which I think are important for every entrepreneur, and it might be obvious to most people, but again, I don't know if people put into practice. So the two themes for me at that time: one, trying to build relationships, and two, just trying, taking shots. Like the Japanese nonprofit might not have worked out, and if it had not worked out, I would have tried something else.
Yeah, of course.
And I've had things that have not worked out.
Yeah.
But you just gotta keep bulldozing and forging ahead. So keep trying, and the trying for me, I wasn't actually. The goal for me hasn't always been about just making more money. I like the trying. I like
the garnishing the idea, getting the idea, doing something that appeals to you, and giving it a shot. Is that would I be right about that? Yeah.
Yeah, that I like the hustle. I like the adventure. I love it I love having an idea, and when it comes together, it's a great feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
So I'm at Magna, and I've got to tell you, I used that perch I had in very entrepreneurial, creative ways.
Right.
I can give you all sorts of examples, but one that comes to mind is I heard they were making the movie Tommy Boy in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember Tommy Boy?
Yeah, I do.
So Tommy Boy, it was about the Chris Farley character who worked for his dad's automotive company.
Yeah.
They're making it in Toronto. So I thought to myself, these guys are probably going to need some automotive factories. And who's got more auto factories than Magna? So I got in touch with someone connected with the production, and we cut a deal, and they started using our boardrooms in our factories. Part of my deal was that they would have to credit at the end of the movie Frank Stronach, Don Walker, our CEO at the time, and me. So
Right.
If you ever watch Tommy Boy, you'll see us mentioned. But part of the deal also was they had to get me tickets and backstage passes for Saturday Night Live, which I went to. And I remember the Saturday Night Live episode I went to. Green Day, who I loved, they were the musical guests, and I was at the after party. So remember, I'm still only a young guy. That happened early on. Like I might have been 31 or 32. Again, coming from a background where I never met famous people, and led just an ordinary life. And at that time, things like this were really cool to me. After a while, because there was a lot of stuff like that happened. After a while, I don't want to say I became jaded, but I became less superficial about just meeting famous people. It had to become that it had to have some type of purpose.
Of course.
And this is sort of a completely bizarre experience I had. And I'm going to tell you, I know you want me to talk, Nick, about life beyond Magna, where I stayed until I was in my early 40s. So I stayed there for a while.
Right.
But there's so many experiences I could share with you. But this one is one that always stands out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up because of my age. When I grew up, John Kennedy Jr. was like a rock star.
Yeah, of course.
He was running George magazine.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we had a mutual friend. Again, I was still using my Magna platform to meet all the people I could. And one of my friends was an editor at Vanity Fair magazine. She was friends with John, and she told me that John was looking for backers for George magazine. John flew to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
He flew himself on the same plane. You know which plane I'm talking about, I think.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. I met him, so he flew into our hangar. I drove my car right up to his plane. He got off, hobbling a little bit because he had a cast on his foot. And I've got to tell you, the plane wasn't very impressive looking. It looked like a little puddle jumper.
Yeah.
And here's Kennedy coming off the plane. He's got his crutches, and his co-pilot was like a kid.
Oh wow!
Couldn't have been more than 18 years old. So I just thought, wow, this is an interesting way for a Kennedy to fly to Canada. Yeah. So he hopped in my car, and we spent about 4 hours together. We had a meeting. Leslie joined us for the meeting, mm-hmm. I drove him back to his plane later that afternoon. He asked me if I wanted to go for a spin, actually, mm-hmm. because he loved flying. He was very proud of how he could fly a plane. And he also asked Leslie Marshall if he could fly her back to New York. Now, I had flown Leslie in for the meeting. Mm-hmm. I said no. I flew Leslie in. I'm flying her back because I had a bad feeling. I saw that plane, and I didn't want Leslie to be on the plane. I wasn't worried about the plane having an accident. I just thought this is going to be a bumpy ride home for Leslie. I wasn't comfortable with it, and I declined. I didn't want to go in the plane myself when John offered to take me for a spin. And I liked him. I really liked John a lot. Everyone would. We all know how charismatic the guy was.
For sure.
But I was one of the last people, maybe the last person, to have a business meeting with John, unfortunately, because about 3 days after that meeting, he had his tragic accident in that same plane.
Wow.
So that was a very sad experience I had at Magna, but it's something I'll always remember because I got to meet so many incredible people at Magna, but meeting John, spending a little time with him, and he sent me a nice note the next day, and we were going to continue our dialogue. I don't know where that would have gone. Mm-hmm. I wasn't that impressed with the
magazine,
George magazine business opportunity, but I was impressed with him. But we never had a chance to see anything through. But that gives you, I don't know if that, I hope that gives you an idea, Nick, of the sort of spectrum of experiences I had, the people I met when I was working there. I spent a lot of time working with and traveling the world with Bill Clinton. Belinda mm-hmm. Stronach would often join us. I was at President Clinton's home in New York. This is all post-presidency, of course.
Yeah.
When we opened the Magna golf course, and that there were various departments at Magna that reported to me. The golf course reported to me as well. So when they wanted to bring Tiger Woods out for a special event, it went through me. And when they were thinking about opening the golf course at the beginning, I had this idea. How cool would it be to bring Clinton post-presidency up to Canada for his first post-presidency golf event?
Right.
And I actually got it done. And that led to a friendship more with his, I don't know if I'd call my relationship with Clinton a friendship, because we hung out a lot. He was very nice to me. We had lots of talks and everything. But did he consider me a friend? Who knows? But his chief of staff became one of my closest friends.
And who was his chief of staff?
Doug Band.
Okay.
And I learned, because I was a gatekeeper, I learned in business, it's sometimes far more useful knowing the second in command.
Yeah, for
than
sure.
Knowing
the top guy.
And Doug is still a friend of mine to this day. But maybe it's more because of Doug because Doug was the guy who orchestrated a lot of his activities. So if the Rolling Stones were doing a special charity event, Doug would invite us. And I remember being backstage with the Stones at the Staples Center in LA. And I always loved that band, by the way. So that was,
of course.
That's one of the times when I still was like, I became less interested in meeting stars, but there's certain stars that I loved meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And spending a bit of time with the Stones. And then we went to a box that Clinton had at the Staples Center. And it was an incredible box because we had DiCaprio there, and really the leading lights from Hollywood were all there. And then we went back to someone's home afterwards, and it was a great private party with Demi Moore, I remember, and other interesting people. So I'm name dropping, but I'm not name dropping to try to impress you, Nick, because I know you're not easily impressed. I'm name dropping to tell you
well,
that.
I am impressed. I mean, Bill Clinton's pretty high on the list, right?
I'm telling you this because it's funny. It's funny how setting up a Japanese nonprofit organization led me to all these things. So
incredible. It's an incredible story, actually.
But so let's talk about how this was still my stepping stone for where I wanted to get to next.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I'm working at Magna, and they really take good care of their executives. Really good comp and everything. But I still wasn't going to become Frank Stronach. I still haven't become. I don't want to become some of the things that Frank represents today. But what I mean is, I still wasn't close to enjoying the sort of economic success that he was having, even though I was this, reasonably well-paid executive. I still wasn't my own boss.
Yeah.
I wasn't an entrepreneur, which is where I wanted to get to. And I've got to tell you something. And I saw it with Doug Band and Clinton. We would be on a plane with Clinton. I remember one day we took Clinton and John Bon Jovi. I think Bon Jovi's wife was there. We went to the Preakness race because Frank owned that racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
It was just us on the plane, and after the race we dropped Bon Jovi off, and then another stop we were dropping Clinton off, but he went to shave at the back of the plane and he nicked himself.
Oh.
And he had a hissy fit. And Doug, who's this really important dude who world leaders around the world will call, he was just laying into Doug, get me a new shirt. Like as important as Doug was, Doug still had to get this guy his socks or underwear if that's what Clinton wanted.
Wow.
And I saw that, and it reminded me of my situation. Now, I've got to tell you, Frank was a really gracious boss. He would never ask me to do anything demeaning or.
Yeah, of course.
But at the end of the day, I recognize that working in that role, I was still sort of Frank's bitch.
Yeah.
And I like being reminded of that and reminding myself of that, because I don't want to be anyone's bitch forever. Okay. And I was still in my 30s. And was building a base. And if I forget, I want to talk about real estate because that was sort of part of building my base.
Yeah.
But, Frank always encouraged his executives to buy horses. He wanted us to own horses so we would understand the horse game, because in addition to Magna Automotive, he was focused on the
His
horse
racing.
racing
Yeah,
business.
that's right.
He was a gigantic horse owner.
Yep.
And then he started buying up all these racetracks. And I was part of that. I would go to Santa Anita. I was part of the transaction to buy Santa Anita in Los Angeles. And
I think it was called Magna Entertainment or something like that.
You got it. So he wanted us to buy horses, and very few execs actually took him up on that. And he would always complain, he said, "You guys, you don't know anything about horse racing because you don't own horses. If you want to help me with the business, own a horse." One day, his son, Andy Stronach, called me up and said, "Keith, let's get together." And at our meeting, he said, "Keith, I'm going to claim this horse. Will you buy it?" And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought I was doing it more to support Andy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a write-off, because if you want to lose money, buy horses.
Buy horses, yeah, for sure.
Buy horses. It's the best way to go from billionaire to millionaire, and then millionaire to broke.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't mind writing a check for this one horse, but I thought it was sort of like a charity contribution. I would never hear anything about it again. And then 3 weeks later, Andy called me up and said, "Keith, you better go over to Woodbine. Your horse is racing today." I went over to Woodbine
Mm-hmm.
and went up to the director's lounge or whatever it's called, and Frank was there. And I didn't really love horse racing, and Frank knew that. And he said, "Keith, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Andy put me into that horse, so I bought it."
Yeah.
And he started laughing. And I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "You're racing against me today." I said, "Oh shit! Look, there's not much upside here." But at least he knows that I bought a horse. So I went out to the grandstand. The race went off, and guess what?
You won.
My horse cleaned up.
Oh wow!
Which was, now I'd been in the winner's circle with Frank when his horses won, which was cool. But being in the winner's circle when it's your horse that wins, and being in the stands when you're cheering on your horse, I understand why people want to buy horses. What a feeling of exhilaration.
Yeah.
So I went back up to the director's lounge. Frank very graciously is waiting up there with a glass of champagne to toast me.
Mm-hmm.
So we have drinks, and I think, wow, this is all very nice. By the way, after that race, I bought that horse for maybe it was a lot of money at the time, but let's say my investment, because there were two other owners in it. My contribution was, I think, $50,000.
I was just going to guess that.
Okay.
Yeah, good guess.
So we had paid $150 in total, but I was the only owner in Canada. So that's why I was the representative there. And after the race, we were offered $300K for the horse. And we said, "Oh, no fucking way, let it ride." So that's what we did, because this was too much fun. I didn't care. At that point, I didn't care about my investment. This really was going to be an adventure. That was a Sunday. The next day, Nick, I go back to my office, and we had this little routine. My office was right next to Frank's.
Right.
I would usually get in well before him. I'd get in, let's say, 8:30 or 9 a.m., and he'd come strolling in around 9:30, and he'd usually pop his head into my office and smile, say, "How are you doing?" and then go into his office. But that Monday morning after the race, he was walking by my office, just looked at me. Didn't say anything, but I could already pick up weird body language. He went into his office, and about 10 minutes later, he said, "Keith, come in." So I went into his office, and he said, "There's something funny about your ownership of that horse." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Did you ever actually transfer your funds?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I don't know. There's something fishy here, Keith."
Huh.
And I said, "Well, you call up your son. If there's any problem, I'll fix it." But the funds were transferred the next day, so full payment was made, Frank, and I'm not sure what you're concerned about. So he said, fine. I went back to my office. Then he called me back in about 30 minutes later. He said, Keith, I'm going to move you out of your office. I'm going to move you to one of the outer offices. And he moved in another senior executive into my office.
Okay.
Now, at that point in time, I could have reacted. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just keep my cool. I know how this is going to go down. What I should tell you is that I'd been with Frank by that time for several years.
Yeah.
Frank was mercurial, gracious at times, always pretty nice with me, but he could go off. And he also had very specific needs. You had to understand how to navigate his world and support him. And I figured it out.
Right.
Which is why I had unique longevity with him. Before me, there were like
in and out
6 or 8 right-hand guys who no one lasted more than 6 months. But
how long did you last?
Well, I stayed there from 1994 till 2008. So I lasted until I didn't want to last. So I went into some smaller office in outside of the chairman's area, and I said to myself, okay, whoever he puts in that office, that person's not going to last more than 2 weeks because he won't be able to keep up with Frank. I learned how to anticipate and I took an entrepreneurial approach to my role. So I was always thinking, what can I do that's going to get me one step ahead of Frank?
Right.
So I kept my cool, and guess what? 2 weeks later, almost to the day, Frank moved me back into my office. It's like all was forgotten. He forgot about the whole horse episode, and we resumed our normal relationship.
So this was all about winning. You winning? Is that what it was all about?
Well, that's the only thing I could surmise.
Yeah.
But that experience, Nick, really reinforced in my mind that I was really subject to the whims of another person, and I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be in that type of position.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I was very focused from that point on thinking about all of my next moves.
Yeah,
I had developed a pretty good reputation in the city, a really good network. I was well known enough on Bay Street and in business circles, so I knew I could seize other opportunities. But most importantly, I felt that I could become an entrepreneur, just a full-time entrepreneur. So I mentioned real estate before. From the time I was about 28 or 29, I just had this interest in real estate because, growing up in Toronto, and you're a real estate guy, I think.
Of course.
So we grow up with this real estate psychology that it's a real path to
wealth
and independence. So starting in my late 20s, I said to myself, I'm going to start buying little residential homes. Residential because I thought it was manageable. I thought I could. Residential homes always give you liquidity. If you're ever in trouble, you can sell a home easier than you can sell a condominium or a commercial property. There's always going to be a tenant, and if you buy the right types of homes, you could get a certain caliber of tenant. I just thought it was going to be a lower friction type of foray into real estate.
Yep.
It might not be something I would do exclusively, but that was my focus, and it was painful. I knew it was going to be painful because I didn't have enough money starting when I was 28 to be, buying homes with cash. I had mortgages, but every year I said, I'm going to try to buy a little house or two and keep going. So I started that. By the time I was about 40, I had assembled a good little portfolio for an individual of residential properties. And I had a lot of equity. There was a lot more equity.
Yeah, because of
appreciation.
So how many houses did you amass in that time period?
I don't want to go into specific numbers, but it was I still have, and I've continued to I remained on that path the whole way through my career. That's been a continuing thread. But by the time I got to be in my early 40s, I'm still with Frank and Magna, but I had this feeling of financial independence. I'd done well with Magna. My mortgages, the whole mortgage portfolio was actually, had been reduced, and I had a good asset base in place, and I don't like to talk about fuck you money, but I had enough money to say I don't need to work for someone if I don't want to.
Yeah, of course.
So around 2008, I had a sit down with Frank, and I said, I want to be like you, Frank. I want to be my own boss. I want to be an entrepreneur. I think it's time for me to move out, make a transition here. And he said that he'd like me. He asked if I would remain a consultant to him and the family for a couple of years. I said, sure, I can do that. I just can't come up to the office. The office was in Aurora, and I didn't want to make that drive every day, which I'd been making for many years.
Yep.
And that's what we cut a deal. So I said, I will continue to be a consultant to you for a couple of years, but I'm going to go off and do my own thing, and I can't give you my full time. As it turns out, a lot of law firms found out that I was going to be a free agent, even though I hadn't practiced law since my Toyota days. Many law firms approached me, and I thought to myself, I'm going to need a base of operations, and I do. At Magna, I had hired many of these senior lawyers, even though I wasn't working in a legal role at all.
Yep.
I hired people I hired executives in various parts of the company, including legal. And I always enjoyed working with the lawyers at Magna, and lawyers generally. I like the way lawyers think. I like their professionalism. And I thought, this is a natural place for me to transition to hang my hat at a reputable large law firm. And it would be good because, lawyers are integral to business. Any deal you do is going to involve lawyers in some way.
Right.
So being close to lawyers, establishing more lawyer relationships, I thought was going to be good. So I ended up becoming counsel to a large law firm. I'm still to this day. So that was back at the end of 2008, early 2009. I joined a large law firm.
Heenan Blakey. No.
Yeah, which then I went from that one to Denton's, where I'd been for 10 years. But because of my arrangement with these law firms, I think it's been a very good thing for the law firms. Why do they want me? They want people like me to be rainmakers. Because I had all these extensive relationships. I didn't mind bringing my friends, and Stronachs actually were some of the first clients who came to the law firm and used it. So that was good, but the law firm was another platform for me. There's a place I could help the law firm because I could bring millions of dollars in business to them, just as part of my normal activities. It's not like I had to sweat it. It was just something that happened very organically for me because of those relationships I had built, and people trusted me. Another important thing in business is not only creating relationships, but being loyal to everyone you work with. If you're loyal, people will be loyal to you, and good things happen. So one of the first entrepreneurial things I did within a year of leaving Magna and being with a law firm, I bought Krispy Kreme Canada, the donut company, with some friends. And it was not in such great shape, but I always loved their donuts.
Well, there was a huge, excitement over Krispy Kreme donuts for a while.
Do you remember? This is before I owned it. Do you remember when it first came to Canada?
Yeah,
there were lineups around the block.
Everybody was crazy for it.
but they overbuilt in the early 2000s, I think, when it first opened up here, really overbuilt, built all these big factory stores. And it was really on the verge of going under because they didn't have the right business model. So what I figured out was that we had to open up more small stores and not as many factory stores.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
A hub and spoke model. So you open up these big factory stores, and like you open up one big factory store for every 4 or 5 smaller satellite stores.
Right.
Started opening up a lot of satellite stores. Anyway, we turned the company around completely. Maybe turned it around too effectively, because I got to tell you, I loved owning Krispy Kreme donuts. I loved it because charities would call me, and it was the easiest thing, giving thousands of donuts to this charity or that charity.
Yeah.
Because I've since leaving Magna, I've been involved in so many businesses, and usually the business people can't relate to, but all my friends could call me and say, Keith, can you get me a gift card, or I need to pick up donuts. So that was fun. My kids could relate to it. Everybody could relate to it.
So
it's tangible.
So did you buy the whole company, or you bought a portion of it, or
No, we bought all of Canada.
All of Canada? Wow.
The private equity firm that bought the U.S. rights, they wanted to buy it back from us in 2019, and it was one of those offers you can't resist. And even if we wanted to resist it, they were sort of City Hall, and you can't fight City Hall.
Yeah.
So we would have had, I think, all sorts of operational problems down the road if we were not playing ball with them. But along the way, so there was Krispy Kreme, which was my first move, but there was a whole series. Like I went crazy in the entrepreneurial realm. Crazy, not in an irrational way, but just in terms of just being as enthusiastic as possible about being an entrepreneur and building things and creating things. And that's what turned me on. I still love, to this day, starting something from scratch and then getting it to blossom. I always loved doing things that were a bit different and where innovative, even better, if I could be pioneering a little bit. So that, and I was very fortunate that my timing worked out this way. So I had left Magna, and a couple of years later, marijuana, cannabis, the cannabis industry was very much front and center here in Canada, because Toronto was really the epicenter of cannabis finance, and it had become legalized. So I was reading those tea leaves a little before it happened, and I ended up becoming a co-founder of one of the larger cannabis companies at the time, and it was called Slang. And like a lot of these cannabis companies, it did great. Right. It came out of the gate very strong.
Did you do the retail end, or were you a grower?
No, we were a grower, manufacturer, and a brand company. We created various brands. And I wish I could tell you I knew a lot about cannabis personally, but I've never been a user. It just wasn't. I think it's great if you are, but it just never appealed to me. But the business certainly did, and the opportunity. Because I recognized before it was legalized that this was something that could help so many people, and not just recreationally, but we all know that there's CBD and there's many benefits to cannabis. So I was pleased. I thought it was insane that it wasn't legal. So to be an early mover when it had become legal, and to have one of the early companies. So this company did really great. It went up to like a $400 or $500 million market cap. But I knew that it was time to, you can't hang around some of these things, because I thought there was some hype. So I didn't hang around, and I did well with it. And I did one other thing that I really enjoyed in cannabis. It was a crazy time. Nick, I don't know, were you involved at all, or do you remember how crazy the business side of cannabis was? Like, there were so many companies.
Of course, you saw like the retails were popping up left, right, and center, and it was a big talk. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it. Retail was
big, but there were companies coming from all over the world trying to go public in Canada.
Yeah,
but it was an insane bandwagon. Everybody was jumping on it, and celebrities were signing up with companies.
Yeah.
Do you remember Martha Stewart had a deal with a cannabis company?
Mm-hmm.
Snoop Dogg.
Well, I remember there was like an investment, like I think like Motley Fool or something. Like they had the stock picks for marijuana business. So it was interesting.
Well, it was a great way to lose money as a stock pick, because these things skyrocketed and then many of them tanked and went out of business. But during that,
I didn't buy any, by the way. So,
but when it was all the rage, like when it was peaking, I had very lucky timing, because at Magna, I had become friends with Gene Simmons from KISS. And we spent a lot of time together. In fact, Gene Simmons, Linda Stronach, Randy Lennox, and I had set up a record label called Simmons Records, which did not do well. So when you're an entrepreneur, lots of things don't work out, but you got to keep trying. So I've had things that did not work out. And Simmons Records did not work out. Nobody suffered any major losses or anything, but it just didn't. It's one of those things that did not come together. But my relationship with Gene was established. We traveled a lot together, and we'd established a relationship of trust and loyalty. When marijuana was going nuts, I called Gene and I said, Gene, I think we should try to cut a deal with a cannabis company where you're an ambassador, because I think I could get us a real payday. So Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart at the time, they were getting paid something like $1 million, $2 million bucks. By the way, just to give everybody context, we're here in Canada right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Tragically Hip were major investors in their own in a cannabis company. Everybody was on this bandwagon.
Yep.
So my timing was really good, and Gene said sure, and I said, okay, Gene, I'm going to bring some top cannabis companies down to your place in LA. So we all met at Gene's house, and I had the cannabis companies make pitches, and then they went away, and I said, Gene, okay, leave this with me. I'm going to negotiate one hell of a deal. And I did.
Right.
I think we set the record for celebrity comp from a cannabis company at that time. So I negotiated a deal with a cannabis company that paid us $12.5 million, mostly in cash, some in stock. And we did that deal, and it was major news at the time. And I still love that I did that deal,
right?
Because sometimes you work really hard on building a business, and sometimes you just do a deal like that where you're bringing people together, and you're actually not doing such heavy lifting. In that instance, I just recognized an opportunity,
right?
And I brought the right people together, and it happened quickly. So that was a cool thing I did. And from
did you get a piece of the action out of that one?
Oh no, more than a piece of the action. We were, Gene and I were. This wouldn't have happened if not for me, and it wouldn't have happened without Gene.
Without Gene, yeah.
But this is, I don't operate as an agent. We operate as partners. But
fair enough.
He got more of it than I did, but I still did okay.
Just a question. He doesn't, like, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but he doesn't drink or anything like that, right?
Gene's like me. We're the most boring people. He's never smoked a joint in his life.
Yeah, that's
like me. He doesn't like alcohol. And it's not because we're puritanical or anything. In my case, I've never acquired a taste for alcohol or cannabis.
Yeah.
And I think in Gene's case, he's very disciplined and principled about how he leads his life, and he likes to have clarity all the time.
Yeah.
But it was so funny that here were two guys, Gene and me, doing this cannabis deal, and we were not cannabis users.
Yep.
Gene had never taken a puff in his life.
Right.
I've taken a puff in my life, but he's never taken a puff in his life. But he did say, something, if we go to the Toronto Stock Exchange or something, I might consider doing a ceremonial
Puff.
puff, but that didn't happen. But the interesting thing is, not only did we do that cannabis deal, but then Gene and I did an alcohol deal. Again, he doesn't drink booze at all, and we created our own vodka called Money Bag Vodka. Mm. We did well with cannabis. We didn't do well with the vodka. Oh, wow. So we partnered with a great group here in Toronto, and they set everything up. And Gene was going to be the consumer-facing person for us and broker retail relationships, because he introduced us to the CEO of 7-Eleven. Gene is super connected. People think of him as a rock star and a good businessman, but they have no idea how connected Gene is. If someone needs to hook up with Elon Musk, Gene can actually do it. Super connected guy. Anyway, so he doesn't do alcohol or cannabis, but we still started Money Bag Vodka, which didn't work out, but it was a fun adventure along the way. So I've been talking way too much, Nick, but I wanted to give you a sense.
I don't want you to stop talking. So
I've got to stop talking soon because I want to hear how you'd like me to wrap this thing up, or which direction you want to go in from here.
Okay.
I want to give you a sense for my wacky, sort of crazy life until now. And then lots of things happened that we do not have time to cover now in business, some good things. But the thing that I'm most passionate about, and I have been most passionate about for the last 3 years of my life, is professional sport.
Yes.
As an entrepreneur, I think it is one of the most exciting areas to get involved in. I think it's wide open. You don't have to be some rich guy. You don't have to be deeply connected. You can have a good idea at times and have the guts and the skills to just pursue it, and you can turn something into nothing.
Right.
So my interest in professional sports started about 3 years ago. I went to a friend's backyard, and he had a court that I'd never seen before. It was a paddle court. Have you ever heard of paddle?
Yeah, I have.
It's the fastest growing sport in the world.
Right.
Gigantic in Europe and it's second biggest sport in Mexico, for example, and it's exploding right now here in North America. So my wheel started turning. Anyway, I created the Pro Paddle League, the only professional paddle league in the world.
Okay.
And it's doing really well. It's up to 10 teams, and it's a successful league. And then that sort of whetted my appetite when it came to sport. I saw how easy it was to mobilize people. Right. Sometimes in business, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to raise money and you have to attract support. And that's a tough part of business. Some people are good at attracting that support and raising money, and some people not as good. But when it comes to, at least in my experience, when I first did that Pro Paddle League, I couldn't believe how easy it was to get people asking me if they could write checks. Because sport is different, right? It's not only about the numbers. There's so many other elements, dynamics. It's about, people have egos, and a lot of people have this dream of owning a professional sports team. So if you can actually facilitate that dream, they'll go through hoops for you.
Right.
So I recognize how seductive sport is. And also I loved that I love creating, and I was having the chance to create something that didn't previously exist that could have really a strong impact. And then along the way with some friends, we bought the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball club that plays out of Christie Pitts.
Yep.
And that's been fun. And that was more about supporting the community than anything else. I don't know if you've come to games. The greatest podcast producer in the world
Mike
supports us a lot.
He's got your sign here in his shop here.
Yeah, so that's been fun. But that's been we invested a lot of money in the Toronto Maple Leafs. We think it's important because in Toronto, it drives me crazy that if you want to go to see a sports event like a basketball game or a hockey game, even baseball, you're spending hundreds of dollars. And if you have some kids, it's prohibitive. So I loved that with the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's free. We don't charge admission.
Right.
Anyone can come. They can sit on the hill. We have seating for them now as well. So I love that we could support the community that way, the area around Bloor Street, the annex. And this is the oldest baseball team in the country, right?
Well, you kept it alive too. So
Babe Ruth hit his first professional home run against the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team in 1914.
wow.
So this team is part of the history of the country. And we had a chance to buy that piece of history and support professional baseball at Christie Pitts. And we've grown attendance a lot. And my Japanese that I started telling you about at the beginning of this talk came in handy once again, because we had this professional men's team. We're one of 9 teams playing in the IBL. Our team, by the way, is the only team that does not charge admission.
Right.
But we had this idea to bring in the best female baseball player in the world. Her name is Ayami Sato.
Yes.
To bring her in from Japan to pitch for our team. This happened this season.
Right.
And things went crazy in a good way.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people who might not have come out in the past came out to watch our games. We were on the front page of national newspapers the day after she pitched.
Right.
So it was great, but I had a chance. She ended up staying with me in my home. So I had a chance to converse with Sato in Japanese, and we had a press conference where I was able to use a little Japanese. So my Japanese actually came in handy
Once again.
30 years later.
Right.
But the Sato experience and my experience with baseball has now led me to what I think will be the most important thing I ever do in my business career, maybe in my life, aside from my family, of course. And you see this, the T-shirt I'm wearing.
Yeah, I see it.
After the Pro Paddle League, I thought, what a shame. I've developed this skill set I know how to build a professional sports league. How many people in the world have built a professional sports league from scratch?
Right.
10,000?
Exactly.
1,000, maybe 500 people?
Yep.
I don't know, but it's a small group. And I was in that group. And I had learned how to do it by trial and error the first time round with the Pro Paddle League, where I made lots of mistakes, but we still sort of plowed through it. But now, after that, I said to myself, I really know how to do this. What a shame. How am I ever going to have another opportunity to use this skill set? I'm not going to find another paddle. But then the light bulb went off because of what I was doing with Sato and baseball. There's professional women's basketball, professional women's hockey,
Yeah.
professional women's soccer, and lots of other professional women's leagues now for more obscure sports. But for America's pastime, the oldest sport in the US, there wasn't a professional league for women. So that led me a year ago to launch the Women's Pro Baseball League.
Wow.
And we haven't looked back since. It's been on fire. It's been so much easier than the last league I started because from day one, we had incredible media support. We were on Saturday Night Live within the week of launching. We've been on ABC, CBS, just millions of dollars in media coverage. But why this is so important to me, this is an incredible business opportunity. I think, if you see what's happening in women's basketball, where teams are selling for hundreds of millions of dollars, women's soccer teams selling for minimum $70 million.
Right.
The hockey teams will go for a lot of money. They haven't sold them yet because one person owns all of them. But the Professional Women's Hockey League will be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It already is, I think.
Right.
So there's this great economic opportunity. And it started off as a business opportunity for me, but then I started meeting all of these women players, like Sato first, but then I met all the American players. And we had our tryouts for the league 4 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. at Nationals Park, home of the Washington Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Very supportive of us. And 600 women players from 10 different countries attended. And I got to talk to so many of these young players. And they brought sometimes their little sisters or brothers or their moms, dads. And it's so unfair in my mind that there hasn't been a professional league for these elite great players until now. There was a professional league way back when, covered in the movie A League of Their Own, but it ended in 1954.
Wow.
So for 80 years, there's been this void that we're filling now. It's more important than just creating a professional baseball league for the best players in the world. What it's going to do is it's going to create a larger ecosystem. It's going to spawn the development of girls' teams for little girls. It's going to hopefully spawn the development of high school teams for girls and collegiate teams for female players. Right now, in American high schools, girls are playing on boys' teams at the little league level too.
Right.
Because, and this all ties back to a historical landscape that was completely misguided 100 years ago. 100 years ago, it was thought that women weren't strong enough or athletic enough to play baseball, so they were all shifted into softball.
Yep.
But if you look at the caliber of women's baseball, it is the gap between professional men's baseball and women's baseball is far smaller than the gap between men's basketball, women's basketball,
right,
men's hockey, women's hockey, men's soccer, women's soccer. And I say that because if you look at D1 teams in the States, the top level collegiate athletes,
mm-hmm.
they don't have women teams right now. They will because of what we're doing, I hope. But there are a bunch of women playing on these D1 teams with men. That would never happen in basketball or the other sports. So we think that women's baseball is such a great product, a competitive product that baseball fans are going to love. But most importantly, women are going to love it. It gives them this platform. It gives little girls something to shoot for. And we think it is going to result in the evolution of a much greater infrastructure for women's baseball in the United States and hopefully beyond.
Well, it sounds amazing, and you know what? You've definitely found a need that didn't exist, and you a true entrepreneur at heart. And so I'm going to have one last question just to wrap up the show and everything like that. So you positioned yourself. You were able to, through a little bit of ingenuity and luck, you were able to meet all the right people, and I think that's obviously a testament to your success. What advice do you have for young entrepreneurs out there? They don't have those connections. What do they do? Do they have to get those connections? Do they just have to follow their heart and just try to do what they love, and hopefully that'll bring success one day? What advice do you have for young entrepreneurs who may not have all the connections that you have?
Okay, first, remember, I didn't start off with connections, and you don't have to have connections. It's also a different world today.
Yep.
But it always helps to have relationships and connections. So first, if you have zero relationships, go out and manufacture them.
Right.
Okay. Get involved in politics or charities. Be more social. Be out there. But in the social media world we live in right now, connections are not as vitally important. In some ways, I think they're still really important, but there are lots of ways to develop relationships. And now maybe with social media, it's easier. If you're entrepreneurial and creative, there are ways to develop all the relationships you need. But the most important thing, because today you can develop a technology company from your basement by yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't need to have relationships. Yeah. I still think have relationships because it's going to serve you well in life, not only business. And why do we do business? Why do we try to excel at business? We try to excel at business, hopefully because you find it gratifying, as I do. Mm-hmm. I find it enjoyable. But we also try to succeed at business so we can make better lives for ourselves. If you have more money, you can have a better life.
For sure.
If you just have money, I know everybody knows this, but it's not just about money. It's about relationships. Relationships are really going to enrich you more than money or anything else in life. So I think being relationship focused, really important, but trying, whether you have the connections or not, come up with an idea or find somebody with an idea. It doesn't have to be always your idea. Yep. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs and business people know people who have a good thing going and they attach themselves. They insinuate themselves into that opportunity.
Yeah.
And make success that way. But trying, and I would tell you, I've been saying it's not just about making money. I think business is very gratifying, and I think you could be a school teacher, or you could be a firefighter. But I love this term that started getting used widely, not too many years ago, about a side hustle. I think it's great for people to have side hustles.
Right.
Even if the side hustles don't end up making them a fortune, I think it's part of broadening horizons and just having more fun in life. Because if you're pursuing something, if you have some side hustle or it's your main hustle, it's going to bring you into contact with people. It's going to just, I think, make your life more interesting.
Yep.
And you want to have an interesting life. So I think business is a way for people to have more interesting lives. And it's that journey. It's not always finding the pot of gold. It's trying to get to the pot of gold. That's more fun than actually getting your hands on that pot of gold. So
totally agree with you.
Encourage everyone people don't think they're entrepreneurs. Anyone who wants to try can be an entrepreneur. So I think the main thing is try, hustle, get up every day, and try to hustle a bit.
Well, one day I hope to tell you about my story and some of the great ideas that I have. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, similar to yourself, and love the opportunity to sit down with you one day.
I've really enjoyed this. I thought that you just wouldn't stop talking, and I could barely get a word edgewise. But aside from that, Nick, I've really enjoyed our dialogue together, even though it was more of a soliloquy on my part.
Well, it was amazing. It was amazing. Well, I couldn't interrupt you because you said everything right, and you were just going on about your amazing experiences. And one day we'll get together with you, me, and Mike. How's that?
I would love, it's always been my dream to be on the Toronto Mike podcast. Maybe the two of us can do it together.
That sounds like all right.
We can make that happen.
Let's do it.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you for listening to Building Success Series with Nick Ainis, a podcast breaking down real estate, investing, business growth, and making money. Proudly brought to you by Nick Ainis Enterprises. Please share, like, and subscribe. See you again in 2 weeks.